Now, let's just come to the fun stuff. What was your first sexual awakening?
You really want to know?
I really want to know because you got to know mine today morning. So I'm pretty sure I need to know yours.
Make a guess.
I'm not going to guess, do this guess game and all that. This is not a reality show called a guess game. You better tell me. It's Chaya with my. Better spill your sexual awakening.
So what would you call sexual awakening?
It could be a form of a person, or it could be just a book. It could be anything.
Do you think people can be awakened sexually from a book?
Yeah, I've had my mother was actually sexually awakened by Mills and Boons. So I'm pretty sure there is high chances anybody could be. Like, I thought I was sexually awakened by Sydney Sheldon, but that was not the case actually.
No wonder you're very sultry. It's in your blood.
Just spill it out.
Well, it's quite difficult to describe because I did have my first sexual encounter at a very young age, which is not good for anybody. I would not recommend that. I think teenagers should not be, exposed to sex at that age. However, that said, I don't call that my sexual awakening. I think my sexual awakening has to be Raz, Dina Moria, and Bipasha Basu. I have probably seen that movie and imagined myself as both Bipasha and Dino at different points of my life, which is something I still don't understand. That should I be Bipasha, should I be Dino? But then I guess that's why I feel sexuality is so fluid.
Right.
But that said, I would say it has to be Dina Moria.
It's the same case with me, being Shilpa Shetty in Dalkan. Like, I couldn't decide who should be my
I
guy.
think Bipasha was a bit fat back then.
A bit. Okay, coming back, I wanted to come back to fashion industry. You work with the fashion industry a lot. So is gay people or the LGBT people accepted more in the fashion industry? Because anyway, that is a very stereotypical thought that everybody thinks. So is it the same case where they have a safe space where they can express themselves and be themselves, and that industry is ready to accept them the way they are?
Interestingly, it depends from company to company. I think you're probably wrong to assume that gay people are more acceptable in the fashion industry. It does tend to be that so if we read the Devi Purana, if we read the mythology, the texts of Hinduism, we realize that the feminine, the divine mother goddess, she lives in all of us, and we say that gay men tend to be a lot more sensitive, which is where we say that a lot of people tend to relate to being feminine, and that's why I guess a lot of gay people tend to be effeminate, and people would normally assume that they would be a lot more accepted in fashion industries, but that's not true. I think that depends on the company. There are a lot of companies which tend to be a lot more progressive. There are companies that tend to be a lot more aggressive. If you are in a more corporate-ish sort of setup, and there are a lot of companies that have that, you probably would be much less acceptable. However, if you are a mainstream designer and you're working in a factory, I guess a lot of people would not have problems with you, So it really depends on the environment you're in. It also depends on what kind of setup you're in. And it also depends on what kind of profession, what kind of, what kind of trade that you hold there. I mean, are you a designer? Are you in, for example, I am a retoucher, I'm working in the back end. Now people have not even seen me most of the times, It's sometimes I do get to be on shoots, yes. And a lot of people are surprised that, I'm gay, and they're like, oh, you're gay, and I'm like, yeah, I am, So it's more, I'm like, do I have to come out again? Like, I thought I was in the fashion industry, and I thought it was assumed that I'm a guy and it has to be gay. So I realized that in my late teens, when I started working, that it's actually not a norm. It's not true. People do not just assume that you're gay because you work in fashion. There are so many straight people. In fact, most of the successful photographers and agencies that I know tend to be owned or tend to be run by straight people. And however, that said, they are accepting of gay people. Yes, but are they more accepting? No, that again depends on the person. It's not safe to say that fashion is a safe genre or a trade wherein gay men can just work.
Okay, so it depends actually.
You work for a company which is LGBT pro,
right?
And that's not a fashion company.
Right.
Same happens for companies.
So we live in a country where there is an archaic law which is actually not giving us the freedom to express ourselves or sexually.
Yes.
I mean, So, what do you have your thoughts about Section 377?
I think before I go into that, I would also like to mention that I used to be really interested in gay politics and what's happening around me. And at one point, I was also a philanthropist who used to be involved in a lot of activities, you know. But I guess I've just gotten disgusted by the amount of, you know, hypocrisy and the amount of two-faced bitches that, you know, exist within Bangalore and outside. That said, the law itself is quite unneeded and undesired at this point of time. I mean, are you aware why Section 377 was put into the...
Why don't you speak about it? Maybe I might have a different perception about it, and you might have a different knowledge about it, and maybe you should share it.
Well, it's quite funny because when we actually try to go see online and try to find out the history of Section 377, it's been erased from our own Indian archives, and there actually are no archives in a way to say anyway, but it's not there, it's not mentioned. It's almost like a shame to our government, which is quite sad because it's a law. It's just like any other IPC. I mean, so what if it talks about sexual acts between two consenting homosexuals or two consenting straight people or two consenting lesbians or whatever? It's just another law, you know. And interestingly, back in the day, in the 19th century, in 1861, when Section 377 was gotten into framing by the British government at the time, there was the spread of a very highly contagious STD called syphilis. Now, what happened was the Britishers, they were posted in India, and a lot of soldiers were refrained from bringing their families because of the costs involved, and the Britishers were also losing their hold to a degree. They were aware that things may not be that great over the next few decades, which is true because I mean in about less than 100 years we did get our freedom, you know. So men have urges, and men need to do something about it. A lot of people in military started having sex amongst each other, you know. And men who have sex with men, which is MSM, tend to probably have a lot more prevalence of STDs, including syphilis, which is actually very, very common in people who have anal sex, unprotected anal sex. And I'm quite sure that people did not use condoms back then, even if they were there. I'm not sure if they were. I mean, do you know about that? I don't know.
Probably. I don't think condoms existed then.
Yeah, I don't think so. So it was very, very common to actually acquire STDs, and a lot of people who might assume that it's HIV, it's actually not HIV, and I've never understood the fuss that gay men and everybody else...
Do you think the HIV virus came about around 1960s to 1980s?
Exactly. So, I mean, people just make such a fuss about STDs and HIV people and positive people. I have been subjected to stupid rumors that I have AIDS. I'm positive, and it's quite funny because they've been going on for the last 7 years, and I start telling people like, okay, please at least call me positive if you really want to create a rumor about me, because if I had really had AIDS, I would have died. I mean, you lose your immunity. At least go and educate yourself. There are a lot of other STDs which are very, very contagious.
Right.
Herpes tends to be one of them. Syphilis tends to be one of them. So these two STDs were actually getting really, really, really familiar and common amongst the British soldiers, and they were losing soldiers. So they had to actually put a law that prevents oral sex, prevents anal sex of any nature, which is why this law came into being. And it's high time that at this point of time, when we have prevention, we have cure for it, we have tablets for it, we have discovered penicillin for curing syphilis, which I'm pretty sure a lot of my fellow gay men in this country need to read about, and be making themselves aware of STDs and sexual health. This law is undesired. I mean, the government, yes, it's one thing to say that we deserve our right as a minority. The government needs to protect, even if, let's assume that you and I are both gay in this country, two people. The government is responsible for us. We are Indian citizens by birth, If I pay taxes here, I demand and expect the government to provide me equal freedom and expression as anybody else. That is one part. Second part is this law doesn't apply to the times that we live in. I mean, there is no prevalence of syphilis or herpes or HIV, which is epidemic, that you need to have Section 377. It needs to be scrapped.
So you all heard about the what Ashish told about Section 377, and that's quite important for people to know, because we've been only hearing the fact that that Queen Victoria thought that gay men, or men having sex with other men were unnatural, and that is the reason why she put this archaic law. Now there is this different side of the law that we need to know, and that is the reason why this law exists. And I think the British played a huge role in it, because it spread all across all different countries, or the Commonwealth countries, where the British actually went and they literally tried to capture the country in whole, and etc etc. So I think I'm always all up for removing this archaic law, and that is, so do you see a point in a future where this will be wiped out from the country's legal system?
I definitely see that, Maya, because look at where we've come from. We've just been independent for about 70 odd years, roughly, and we already have seen a lot of change happening in the society. I mean, America's been independent for more than 200 years. A lot of these European countries which have gay marriage today have never been conquered, most of them, So coming from a political point of view, our country is just 70 years young. It's still quite young. Give it time. I mean, mindsets are changing. The older generation, our parents, the generation we live in, my parents are very progressive, yes. Your parents are progressive as well, but
they're taking slow steps, but it's great.
Yeah, but not every Indian parent is like that.
Exactly.
A lot of times when even when I came out to my parents, the first question that my dad asked me is like, "Are you important? Are you positive? Do you want to confess something? Are you dying? Do you think there's a problem?" And he is actually quite aware of things. He was aware that things like that exist, which are epidemic amongst gay people, which is not true, which is exactly what I explained just recently. In fact, if statistics were to be checked on, herpes and syphilis is actually very, very common, and so common that 1 in 10 people in India do have herpes or syphilis, which is quite shocking, because that includes straight people as well.
Exactly.
And our government needs to remove Section 377, not because it's a problem amongst gay people, it's a problem for everybody.
Yeah. So basically, it's not about the minuscule of a population, it's actually to do with the whole population.
Yeah, right? I mean, we are not asking for some gay rights or, quote unquote, we want azadi. No, we are, and it's not that I care a damn about the government thinking that my sexual freedom is illegal. I care two hoots about it. But that said, the government definitely needs to remove it, because it doesn't apply here, and it's something which is the need of the time, and I'm pretty sure the government will.